My beloved child. Pause here for a moment. Do not rush past these words. Something has been trying to reach you for longer than you realize, and somehow, against all odds, you have arrived here at exactly the moment you were meant to. There are messages that drift through the world unnoticed, lost in the noise of daily life, but this is not one of them. This message carries a weight that your spirit has already begun to recognize. You have been feeling it, haven't you? That strange sensation that something important is happening beneath the surface. That feeling that a chapter is quietly shifting before your eyes, even if you cannot yet see the pages turning. The truth is that your soulmate is standing in the middle of a decision so significant that it has altered the rhythm of their thoughts, interrupted their sleep, and filled their quietest moments with questions they can no longer ignore. This is not a small choice. This is not a passing uncertainty. This is a crossroads. And what makes it even more surprising is that the decision is not simply about love. It is about everything that love demands. For a long time, your soulmate believed they understood what their future would look like. They had drawn invisible outlines around their life. They had plans, expectations, assumptions about where they would go and who they would become. Then something happened. You happened. Whether they have fully admitted it or not, your presence entered their life like a force they were never prepared to encounter. Some connections arrive softly. Others arrive like a storm hidden inside a whisper. Yours was the second kind. And ever since that moment, they have been carrying a question that grows louder every day. A question they can no longer push aside. A question that has followed them through crowded rooms and lonely nights. A question that has reached a point where it demands an answer. Can they truly build a future with you? At first, that question sounded simple. But as time passed, it became far more complicated than either of you could have imagined. Because there is something your soulmate has been wrestling with deep within themselves. Something few people know. Something they rarely reveal. Something that has become the hidden reason behind their struggle. Before that truth is revealed, you must understand what has been happening inside their heart. They have been watching. Observing. Not in the way most people do. Not casually. Not carelessly. They have been paying attention to the smallest details. The way you react when life disappoints you. The way you carry yourself after difficult days. The way you continue moving forward when no one is applauding your efforts. Every one of those moments has spoken to them. And every one of those moments has added weight to the decision they are trying to make. Because the deeper they look, the harder it becomes to walk away from what they feel. That is where the struggle began. Not because their feelings are weak, but because their feelings became too strong to ignore. My child, there are people who fear rejection. There are people who fear loss. There are people who fear loneliness. Your soulmate's greatest fear is different. Their greatest fear is choosing a future that changes everything they have ever known. That fear has been growing quietly. You may not have seen it. You may not have heard them speak about it. But it has been there. Waiting. Expanding. Becoming impossible to avoid. The strange thing is that they never expected to care this much. When this connection first entered their life, they believed they could remain detached. Logical. Careful. Protected. They thought they could control their emotions. Yet the more they tried to maintain distance, the closer they felt drawn. The more they attempted to understand you, the more mysterious you became. The more they learned about you, the more questions emerged. And somewhere during that process, a realization appeared that frightened them. You began to feel like home. That realization changed everything. Because once someone begins to feel like home, losing them feels like losing a piece of yourself. And that is exactly where your soulmate now stands. Caught between desire and fear. Pulled between hope and uncertainty. Standing at the edge of a future they desperately want but do not fully understand. What they have not told you is that they have been having conversations inside their own mind. Endless conversations. The kind that continue long after everyone else has gone to sleep. The kind that replay old memories and imagine future possibilities. The kind that leave a person staring into darkness while searching for answers. Again and again, one thought keeps returning. What if this connection is real? Not ordinary attraction. Not temporary excitement. Not passing affection. What if it is something deeper? What if it is the kind of connection that only appears once? What if meeting you was not an accident? What if the feelings they have been trying to analyze cannot be explained through logic alone? These questions have unsettled them. Not because they dislike the answers. Because they suspect they already know them. And knowing those answers would require them to make a choice. A choice that would change the direction of their life. But there is still another layer. A hidden layer. A truth beneath the truth. And this is where the story becomes even more surprising. Your soulmate is not struggling because they doubt your value. They are not struggling because they question your worth. They are not struggling because they cannot imagine a future with you. In fact, the opposite is true. The reason they are struggling is because they can imagine it. Too clearly. Far more clearly than they expected. They have imagined ordinary moments. Conversations. Laughter. Shared victories. Shared disappointments. The simple routines that create a life together. And those visions have become difficult to erase. But every beautiful vision has collided with something else. An old wound. A hidden fear. A belief they have carried for years. A belief that whispers dangerous questions whenever happiness gets too close. What if I am not enough? My child, those words have more power than most people realize. Entire destinies have been delayed because of them. Entire relationships have been tested because of them. Entire futures have been placed on hold because of them. Your soulmate carries those words. Perhaps not openly. Perhaps not consciously every day. But they are there. Living beneath the surface. Influencing decisions. Creating hesitation. Planting doubt. Long before you entered their life, experiences taught them to protect themselves. Disappointments taught them caution. Heartbreak taught them distance. Loss taught them restraint. And over time, those lessons transformed into invisible walls. Walls designed to keep pain away. Walls designed to prevent vulnerability. Walls designed to maintain control. Then you arrived. And somehow, without trying, you began making those walls feel unnecessary. That is both beautiful and terrifying. Because walls that took years to build do not disappear overnight. Even when love stands on the other side. Especially when love stands on the other side. The conflict inside them has intensified recently. You may have sensed it. Perhaps through their energy. Perhaps through unexpected silence. Perhaps through moments when they seemed close one day and distant the next. Those shifts were not random. They were symptoms. Evidence of an internal battle reaching a critical point. Part of them wants certainty before moving forward. Part of them understands that certainty rarely comes before courage. And that realization has forced them into territory they never expected to enter. Territory where faith becomes necessary. Territory where trust becomes unavoidable. Territory where they must choose whether fear will guide them or whether love will. Yet there is something even more astonishing unfolding behind the scenes. Something they themselves are only beginning to understand. The decision they are struggling with is not simply about committing to a future together. It is about releasing an identity they have carried for years. An identity built around self-protection. An identity built around independence. An identity built around never needing anyone too deeply. You see, your soulmate spent a long time convincing themselves that they could navigate life alone. Not because they wanted isolation. Because dependence felt dangerous. Trust felt risky. Hope felt expensive. But then this connection appeared. And suddenly, the old identity stopped fitting. Suddenly, the version of themselves they had carefully constructed began to crack. At first, they resisted. Then they questioned. Then they hesitated. Now they stand in front of a transformation they can no longer postpone. And that transformation is directly connected to you. This is why their decision feels so heavy. This is why they cannot simply dismiss their feelings. This is why every attempt to ignore this connection has failed. Because the decision is not merely about choosing a person. It is about choosing who they will become. The shocking reason behind their struggle is beginning to reveal itself. But before the full truth emerges, there is one detail you must understand. Recently, something happened that deeply affected them. Perhaps it looked insignificant from the outside. Perhaps nobody else noticed. Yet it altered the way they see the future. A moment. A conversation. A realization. Something small enough to escape attention but powerful enough to change perspective. Ever since then, they have been revisiting memories connected to you. Moments they once dismissed now feel important. Words they once overlooked now carry meaning. Experiences they once questioned now appear differently. And the more they reflect, the more difficult their decision becomes. Because every reflection seems to point toward the same conclusion. A conclusion they are trying desperately not to rush toward. Yet it keeps appearing. Again. And again. And again. Almost as if life itself refuses to let them ignore it. My beloved child, there are seasons when answers arrive quickly. And there are seasons when answers emerge through struggle. Your soulmate is in the second season. The struggle is not evidence of failure. The struggle is evidence of importance. People do not wrestle deeply with things that mean nothing. They wrestle with things that matter. And you matter more than they have admitted. More than they have expressed. More than they sometimes allow themselves to acknowledge. That truth is becoming impossible for them to escape. Still, there remains one final revelation. One revelation that explains why this decision has reached such intensity. One revelation that has remained hidden until now. One revelation connected to a promise. Not a promise spoken aloud. A promise made years ago. A promise they made after disappointment changed them. A promise that shaped countless decisions. A promise that influenced every relationship that followed. A promise that now stands directly between them and the future they secretly desire. And as that promise begins to collide with everything they feel for you, a confrontation becomes unavoidable. They cannot keep both. Something must give way. The old promise. Or the future calling their name. At this very moment, they are closer than ever to confronting that choice. Closer than they were yesterday. Closer than they were last month. Closer than they have ever been before. And what they discovered during that confrontation has left them shaken. Because the truth hidden inside that promise was not what they believed. The meaning behind it was not what they understood. And the realization that followed revealed something about your connection that neither of you expected. Something that changes everything. Something so powerful that once it is fully understood, the decision they are struggling with may never look the same again. But that revelation has only begun to surface. And what happens next will determine whether fear keeps control of their future, or whether a completely different path finally opens before them. The moment that exposes the full truth is closer than anyone realizes.